The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual cacophony of alien dialects, translation devices, and the occasional screech of exasperation. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated pods, discussing the latest trade regulations for the Outer Rim territories. Among them, tucked in the human delegations section, Alice sat beside her colleague Leo, her head slowly tilting forward as exhaustion won its ancient battle against consciousness. Leo noticed immediately. His eyes widened as Alice's chin dipped toward her chest, her breathing settling into the slow, rhythmic pattern of sleep. Around them, the Krillian ambassador was mid-rant about tariff percentages, his 3 vocal sacs inflating dramatically with each syllable. "Oh no," Leo whispered, glancing around nervously. Humans were still relatively new to the Galactic Council, only 15 years since first contact, and they were constantly being evaluated, judged, and scrutinized by species who had been navigating the stars for millennia. Before Leo could gently shake Alice awake, a small, furry paw reached across from the neighboring pod. The Vixthar cub, barely 3 cycles old in his species reckoning, leaned over with surprising agility. His kind resembled Earth's otters mixed with red pandas, covered in russet fur with large, luminous eyes that held an almost unsettling intelligence. The cub, whose name roughly translated to Whisker of Dawn, but whom the humans called Pip, carefully placed his tiny paws over Alice's ears and made a soft shushing sound. "Shh," Pip whispered in his squeaky, translator-modulated voice. "Sleeping time is not interrupt time." The nearest delegates turned to look. The Krillian ambassador stopped mid-sentence, his 3 eyes swiveling to observe the scene. A Zenthari warrior diplomat, whose species prided themselves on discipline and alertness, leaned forward with what might have been curiosity or disapproval. It was hard to tell with a face composed primarily of chitinous plates. Leo froze, uncertain whether to intervene or let the situation unfold. But Pip seemed entirely confident in his actions. The cub's mother, Ambassador Tikara of the Vixthar Collective, watched from her position with what Leo had learned to recognize as amusement, a subtle flicker of her whiskers. "The human requires rest," Pip announced to the increasingly attentive chamber, his voice carrying a matter-of-fact authority that belied his size. "This is obvious to anyone with functional sensory organs." A ripple of translation echoed through the room. Several species began chittering among themselves. The Zenthari delegate clicked his mandibles disapprovingly. "This council does not pause for individual biological weaknesses. If the human cannot maintain consciousness during vital proceedings, perhaps their species is not ready for—" "Excuse me," Pip interrupted, his large eyes narrowing with surprising ferocity. "But I must educate you on human biology, since you clearly have not studied it properly." Leo's eyebrows shot up. He'd never heard the normally playful cub speak with such conviction. "Humans," Pip continued, still keeping his paws protectively over Alice's ears, "operate on a remarkably inefficient sleep-wake cycle. Unlike the Zenthari, who rest in brief micro-intervals, or the Vixthar, who can partition their brain hemispheres, humans require consolidated sleep periods of approximately 6 to 9 hours per 24-hour cycle." The chamber had gone remarkably quiet. Even the Krillian ambassador had deflated his vocal sacs. "Furthermore," Pip went on, his tail swishing with academic enthusiasm, "humans are one of the few species who will sacrifice their own biological needs for the sake of duty, obligation, or social expectations. Do you know what human Alice has been doing for the past 72 hours? Leo blinked. He actually didn't know. Pip's mother, Ambassador Takara, spoke for the first time, her voice warm and melodious. "My son has become quite fascinated with human behavior. He has been observing—" "Yes," Pip confirmed. Human Alice has been working with the medical relief teams in Sector 7, helping treat refugees from the Krillian border conflicts. She performed surgery, actual surgical procedures, for 68 hours straight with only minimal rest breaks. She saved 43 lives, including 2 Zenthari juveniles. The Zenthari delegate's posture shifted subtly. Leo recognized it as their equivalent of a surprised lean back. She returned to the station only 11 hours ago, Pip continued. Attended 3 mandatory briefings, helped Human Leo prepare these delegation notes, and came directly to this meeting. By my calculations, she has slept approximately 90 minutes in the past 3 standard cycles. The chamber remained silent. Alice, blissfully unaware, continued sleeping peacefully beneath Pip's protective paws. So when I say sleeping time is not interrupt time, Pip said, his voice dropping to a fierce whisper, I mean that this being has earned rest. Any species that cannot recognize and honor such dedication and sacrifice has no business calling themselves civilized. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Ambassador Tekara stood, her graceful form commanding attention. The Vixthar Collective moves to table this discussion until Human Alice has received adequate rest. We will reconvene in 8 hours. Seconded, clicked the Zenthari delegate, to everyone's surprise. Thirded, wheezed the Krillian ambassador. All 3 eyes focused on the sleeping human with something that might have been respect. The motion passed unanimously. As the chamber began to empty, Leo carefully lifted Alice into his arms. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake. Pip trotted alongside them, his tail held high. Thank you, Leo whispered to the small cub. Pip chittered softly. Humans are strange. You break yourselves to help others, then feel embarrassed when you need help in return. This is both your greatest weakness and your greatest strength. Leo smiled. You're pretty wise for someone so young. My mother says I read too much human literature, Pip replied. Especially your children's stories. They teach important lessons about kindness and protecting those who are tired. As they made their way to the human quarters, other delegates nodded respectfully as they passed. Word had already spread through the station's gossip networks, which operated faster than any official communication system. The next morning, Alice woke in her own bed, confused and well-rested. Leo explained what had happened, showing her the recordings that had already become viral across the galactic network. She found Pip in the station's garden and knelt down to his level. Thank you for protecting my sleeping time, she said softly. Pip's whiskers twitched happily. All beings deserve rest, Human Alice, but especially those who forget they need it while helping others. And in that moment, watching a small alien cub teach the galaxy about compassion and recognizing sacrifice, Alice understood why humanity had been accepted into the Galactic Council after all. It wasn't because they were the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced. It was because sometimes the universe needed species who would work themselves to exhaustion for others, and other species who would protect them while they slept.